I'm Suzanne Sabilla. I'm the owner of Sabilla and Associates, which is the premier leadership and employee development company.
Overcome obstacles, reframe your reality, love life, and have growth goals. Change and shift your energy. Pivot.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Suzanne Sabilla, your host of Pivot Now, where we bring on interesting, exciting, and dynamic guests who will share with us their tips, tricks, and life and business hacks. Today, I am super excited to have this guest on our show. She is absolutely amazing. So you've got to watch our show all the way to the end. She is a physician and medical director who has pivoted in her life and created her own business. She is an integrative coach who uses alternative medical interventions to help professionals and organizations to pivot in their own life and career. She is also a TEDx speaker. Welcome to our show, Dr. Lisa Yeung. Welcome, Dr. Lisa. Woo! Bring it on. You got the hearts and the fire. We've got that going on.
Awesome.
Oh, so excited to have you on. So excited. Thank you so much for being on our show, and thank you for your time. So appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for this time that we get together.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you here. So we want to know more about you and your backstory and how you pivoted in your life or business.
Truthfully, I've had a lot of different pivots in my life. A lot of different pivots. And the most significant to me in my life, as well as to people looking from the outside, is the one where I pivoted, like you mentioned, from being a practicing clinician, primary care doctor, and medical director. I was working in the Bronx on the front lines of the pandemic. And I pivoted and I left that job basically to live my truth. And to shift into building my own business, becoming an entrepreneur, which is not anything that I ever thought when I was training to be a doctor in like the over a decade to do so that I would ever be doing. And doing it because I really feel like I'm able to help even more people in an even more transformative way, using my experience as a doctor, as someone who also has a degree in clinical psychology, with also all the experience that I've gained through my own personal journey, my personal development and growth, where it incorporates alternative modalities that work on the mind, body, and connection. And really, it was actually from my journey of healing myself from being completely depressed and burned out, from overworking myself so much years ago, all the lessons that I learned. And so that most people are like, wait, you did what? My family especially, right? Like you quit your job as a doctor and a medical director, where most people dream to have this. Like, isn't this everything that you've ever wanted? Like, wasn't this your goal? And even though I loved my life, I loved what I was doing as a doctor. I really loved the families that I got to help, especially the difference that I made on the pandemic, in terms of doing what I could to serve the community, especially the underserved community in the Bronx that was hit the hardest, during the pandemic. And at the same time, I had this voice inside of me that kept nagging me eventually, this feeling that there's something else out there where I can, that's even more aligned with my truth, with what's right for me, where I can make an even bigger impact, help even more people, and love it even more. And that's why I pivoted and left my job as a medical director, to strike out on my own and follow my truth, which is exactly what my TEDx is about. It's about how do you live your truth? So many of us are so used to living a life of should, of what we're supposed to do, of checking off the boxes that everyone else, our family, our culture, our society are telling us, this is what you're supposed to do. This is what you do to be successful. And yet we all have this innate truth inside of us that is unique to all of us. And that was the most significant pivot for me, because it was a big stance, me stepping into what my truth is and daring to take the leap of faith to follow that, to give myself permission.
Yeah, amazing. Absolutely amazing. I mean, because I work with a lot of clients that are actually going through that right now, where, their parents were saying, oh, we want you, I want you to be a doctor. I want you to be an attorney. I want you to be, an engineer, right? And so they go through the whole experience, go off to college, go to great schools and all of that. And then they end up working in the field. And I'm working with clients right now where it's like, they don't know, well, this is not really what I expected, or this isn't what I really like, or what I really want to do is something in the creative field, for example. And, oh, my parents would just be aghast at that. I can't do that, right? And so what advice would you give someone like that? Because it sounds like you've gone through that experience and dealing with the expectations of parents and society and culture. How did you overcome those obstacles? And what advice would you give someone undergoing that as well?
Well, it's like they say, Brene Brown says being vulnerable is actually courageous, right? And taking a stance, living your truth, and going for something that you believe in, that you have no guarantee that it's going to work out. There's uncertainty all around you, right? It's a leap of faith. It's vulnerable. It's courageous, right? And so it takes a lot of it takes a certain level of resolve within yourself. Sometimes it means getting to a point where that voice inside of you, that feeling inside of you is so loud that you can't not follow it anymore. That truth is like banging on the door so loud that you can't not follow it anymore. And it's about, this is what I guide and help a lot of my coaching clients with, right? All over the world. And there's many of them super successful leaders and even organizations all over the world that are trying to find their way. They've succeeded based on everyone else's standards. And now, how do you listen to what's actually aligned for you? And often that's a little whisper, especially for those of us who are so used to the parents, family, society, all these things telling us what to do. Those voices are so loud in our head, right? But our truth, our intuition, that's often like a little whisper. And for many of us, we've muted it for so long, we can barely hear it. And so often it's about, how do we peel back? That's what I help my coaching clients with. How do we peel back all those layers so that we can find you again? Find that inner whisper.
Yeah, that's amazing what you do. So can you tell us a little bit more of how you actually uncover that in your coaching clients? I mean, I know it's probably a full, long process. If you could give us a couple of, tips, if you will, that can help us to uncover our own truth.
Well, one of the very first steps is to pause. It's super simple, right? Because as I said, that inner voice, that intuition, that truth within you is often just barely a whisper. Or maybe it has been silenced because you're used to dismissing it and listening to everything else about what you're supposed to, the life that you're supposed to live, the things that you should be doing. And so can we pause long enough in any given moment just to hear that voice? And it's a practice. There are different processes that I can take people through to help them find it. It's a practice where you're not just going. Often many of us have busy schedules, long to-do lists, and we just keep pushing and doing these tasks. And sometimes we're doing it without even pausing to recognize, is this actually moving me towards where I want to go. We're so busy doing sometimes for the sake of doing that we don't realize that it may be taking us on a path that's further away from what we actually truly desire. So I often say to my clients, many of us do in order to be, meaning we take action and then think that that's often to, like you're doing. If you become a doctor, if you work hard, if you make money, if you have a family and children, then of course you must be happy. But it doesn't work that way, right? How many of us in this world, and it's so sad, we see stories all the time of celebrities, of people who make it, and by most people's standards, are super successful. Well, they have amazing lives. They must be so happy and so fulfilled. And yet we hear of them committing suicide, right?
Yeah.
And part of that is because it's the doing first in order to be, but it doesn't work that way. The truth is that when you be first, meaning you really step into who you are, get clarity on that, and start to uncover and discover what your truth is. Uncover and discover what is really aligned with you. What does your heart, your soul really yearn for? And then you embody who you are freely and unapologetically, like giving yourself permission to do that, which is vulnerable and scary often, right? From that place, from that beingness, then if you do from that being, then the actions, all of it just starts to unfold beautifully, right? Everything becomes more aligned and you're already content, happy, and fulfilled here. And then it all works out magically. And it's such a subtle shift. And yet we aren't taught these things. So how can we honor?
So true. I love what you're saying because I think it's so true is the whole part of being rather than doing, because we live in a culture and society that's all about doing, and like you're saying, and I mean, I see that with my son and his peers. He's in high school and there's so much emphasis. He's only a freshman in high school, but yet there's so much emphasis on, well, what college are you going to go to? And you got to get all these extracurricular activities in lined up. And what sports are you playing and what teams are you on and what groups are you participating in and what leadership? I mean, it's too much. It's like so much pressure on them at such a young age. And the whole part about being, like, what is it that you want to do? What does your heart say? And what is it your inner gut says? And what is it that you want to be rather than doing all these things and accomplishing all these things? And then maybe getting to the point where you're not fulfilled. So I love that you're talking about that and that you help clients to actually focus on that, their inner work instead of the outer.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. It's the inner work that needs to come first that makes the biggest difference, right? A lot of the people, my clients that I work with, are high functioning CEOs and executives that have busy schedules, have a lot of responsibilities. And it's sometimes there's a fear, especially with the high achievers, that the most successful, well, if I slow down, if I pause, like if I'm not just doing all the time, like what if I'm not as productive? What if I don't get as many results, right? And I've come to find with so many of my clients, it's completely the opposite. When you take even just a few moments, and I have one of my clients, she's mother of a beautiful family, founding CEO, large company, making difference in her industry. And yet she had started to feel a little bit misaligned. There's a lot of, in her particular industry, a lot of expectations, a lot of, this is how you do it. This is how you make things work. And after we started working together, bit by bit, planting these little seeds, practicing the simple things, because she didn't have time to like do a whole hour long or day long, whatever thing. Even it's just seconds, moments of every day, pausing, checking in, checking and learning how to tune into her intuition and processes that I would walk her through. At first, when I would reach out to her and check in and remind her to do it, she admitted to me later, she's like, oh, it was kind of annoying at first. Like I thought, like, I don't have time for this. Like, I appreciate you reaching out, but I actually don't have time. Like, why are you telling me to pause and think about like what I need? right? And actually after time, even just after a few weeks, she came on one of our calls and she's like, oh my God, I woke up this morning and I just found myself smiling and I didn't even have to try. And I've recently, I felt like I had to put on a front for my whole team because I wasn't feeling me. And I've started to feel even more like me than I ever have. And now I have even more energy and I'm like so clear and so focused. And I get even more done. This is incredible. I had no idea. Right. And so it's the power of pausing and slowing down, which sounds so simple. It feels silly sometimes to people. And yet it is the truth of that subtle shift, that pause, tuning in to your truth, your intuition, and giving over time, practicing, giving yourself permission to follow that, even if it makes absolutely no sense. Right. I've helped her make some very tricky high level business decisions that logically made no sense, seemed completely impractical. And yet her gut, her intuition, whatever you want to call it, kept telling her, oh, but this feels right. And then guided her to bringing those things together and then following her truth while also taking into consideration those practical pieces. And now a month later, she's like, oh my God, that was the best decision I could have made for my company. I've
Wow.
seen the results like tenfold. And
That's
so
amazing. That's amazing. That really is. I mean,
thank
that's
you.
really incredible, the work that you do. And I love that story that you just gave too. I mean, to really see that in action and how that actually transformed her life and in terms of her decision making as well.
Mhm.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I think, oh, go
Yeah.
ahead.
I was going to say too is because you've given us some tips in terms of pausing and reflecting. Can you give us some more tips? I mean, we at this part of our show we call it 3, 2, 1, go. So we'd like to know from you. Give us 3 tips, 2 techniques, and 1 action item to move us forward in our life or business.
So let me share with you actually I have a 4-step framework that I guess each of
Okay.
those could basically be like a tip in itself, right? And in my workshops that I can share with you at the end, I share these are the 4 steps that I take help use essentially. I distilled it down first from my own background, right? From I was in a place years ago when I was living that life of should, checking off the boxes, working hard, doing everything I was supposed to do, living the life I was supposed to live. And after a lot of unexpected life circumstances happened, including being diagnosed with an incredibly rare medical condition myself, while being a resident, while trying to be a doctor, while taking care of all these things, I just kept pushing harder, doing more, like we're saying, right? Pushing
Uh-huh.
harder, doing more, thinking I had no time to take care of myself. And that is what landed me into completely depleted and burned out and unable to get out of bed. And so my framework, everything that I teach and coach on is distilled from the lessons that I learned and also all of the development and growth and journey that I've taken to heal myself since then to be able to be here with you today. Right. And one of my frameworks is a 4-step framework. It's the 4 A's, and that goes into the tips that I will share with your audience. The first step, and this framework I especially use to help people who are feeling completely stressed and overwhelmed, to shifting them to a place of feeling peace and ease. And there's a lot of pieces to this 4-step framework, and I'll share the very basics. The first step is being aware. So awareness is step 1. A lot of times when we're so busy doing, like you and I just talked about, Suzanne, we're not even aware of how we're feeling,
Mm-hmm.
of how stressed we actually are, sometimes because we've gotten used to it.
Mm-hmm.
So can you pause and slow down long enough so that you can even be aware of the emotions that you're feeling, of the sensations in your body, of how tense your muscles might be, right? And how stressed you actually are, or what are the things that are affecting, are causing you stress. And the second step and second tip is acceptance. And to me, acceptance is, can you accept to the point where there's no emotional charge, more than just acknowledge. So it's not just, oh, I'm aware this happening, but sometimes we try to convince ourselves and affirm positive affirmations like, oh, I'm okay, like, and yet we don't feel it, right? Acceptance is how can you, in a really embodied way, accept the situation, whatever is going on, and as well as yourself, for how you're doing, how you're showing up, how you're feeling. Can you truly accept? And from that place, forgiving yourself, forgiving whatever situation may be coming up, no matter how challenging, no matter how seemingly unfair, can you accept all of these things? Because it's from a place of acceptance that then we can actually address it. If we're trying to fight against something, if we have resistance and we're pushing against something that is a reality, that's a truth. One of my other coaching clients last year, he came to me because he was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer. And young guy in his 40s only, no family history whatsoever. And all of a sudden, he went to the doctor because he had some discomfort. And come to find out what the doctors told him, you at most, even with chemo, you only have 2 to 3 years to live.
Oh my gosh.
And you can imagine just the types of emotions and frustration and fear and anger and regret that was started to just overcome him. And he was so upset. And he was upset by the diagnosis, right? Like, I can't believe, why is this happening to me? Right? Why is this happening to me? I don't understand. I've taken care of myself. I've been healthy my whole life and I have no family history. Why? Right? And also, like, all this regret about how he'd live his life. Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? Why didn't I actually go for it that time? Why didn't I? All these things. And although those are absolutely natural emotions and thoughts and feelings to arise, it actually, there's a resistance there where you're fighting and resisting what is. And with him in particular, I took him through different processes. These were some different ways to help him start to accept the diagnoses, the situation, even how he'd live his life and how he's feeling right now. Some of these were strategies and processes, exercises that I gave him that he could work on. And others were because it brought up a lot of trauma from his childhood and beliefs from his culture and family. Some of these were deeper things that I had to take him through, different processes that worked on the subconscious, unconscious level to help him heal some of these pieces. And even though he started off in the beginning, when he started working with me, he knew he needed help and wanted help with this. And at the same time, he's like, well, I'm sure there's a gift, if there's a message in here, maybe it's happening for me, right? All the things that we're taught in personal development, like let's reframe it this way, which works to a certain level, but that's us trying to do it from a conscious place down and trying to convince ourselves or trying to affirm ourselves. And often that's not enough, especially for something so significant like this in his life. And so after working with him for a few weeks on one of our sessions, after taking him through a process, it just suddenly he went silent and he just tears streaming down his face. And after maybe 5 minutes or more of total silence, he was just like, oh my God, I feel it now. I see now how my cancer is actually a message. It's a messenger for me. I realize now, like, this is a gift, because if I didn't have this, then I wouldn't have this wake-up call, and I wouldn't realize that the way I've been living is not how I want to be living. And he said, oh, I still get emotional as I relive it and feel it, because he was just like, I realize now, if I can love my cancer, then I will have truly learned how to love every single part of me. And that was huge, right? And a lot of his struggle, a lot of his pains had to do with really rejecting himself and feeling rejected his entire life.
Mm.
And that moment, hearing the words he was saying, but more importantly, feeling it, feeling the congruence and feeling how he truly meant it. These weren't just words. These were now here, coming from his heart, truly embodied and integrated feeling that he was sharing. That's what I mean by acceptance. And at that point, I knew, okay, he's now accepted to a point where he can even love it. And then from that place, the amazing piece of this is from that place, now he wasn't wasting or spending tons of energy beating himself up or getting upset at the diagnosis and that at his, his situation. What ended up unfolding afterwards is basically nothing short of a miracle. He then had more energy, more resources, more resolve, and he started looking for alternative modalities. All the oncologists told him, at most, you're going to live 2 years, even with chemotherapy. Basically, you should get your things in order and prepare for that. And his tumor marker started off like in the 300 to 400s. It's a tumor marker is basically a lab test that we as doctors do to help us determine how advanced and how progressed the cancer is. And they told him at most the chemo probably will bring it down to 50% at best, right? And normal is less than 5. So his was in 300 to 400s. He then, after I helped him get to this place of full acceptance and he really felt it, then he started to look for alternative modalities, alternative solutions. He was able to even go there because he wasn't beating himself up anymore. And as a result, just a couple of months ago, he sent me a text message and he said, I'm going on a cruise to Europe. And he was so happy and relieved because the reason he was going on the cruise is because he just got the report back that his tumor markers were down to 16.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And so the power of acceptance, this step, as you can imagine, often is the most challenging. It's simple in theory, not necessarily easy or not necessarily comfortable, and sometimes is helpful to have, especially if it's really intense or strong feelings and emotions that are coming up. Sometimes often helpful to have someone guide you, like a coach or a mentor, someone that can guide you. Because often when we're in it, we can't see it very clearly ourselves.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And yet the power of acceptance is that, right? It can be totally life-changing. And although I can't walk your listeners through a process right now, right? And I'm not one-on-one with them, the one piece that I'll leave your listeners with today is, how can you forgive yourself? Forgive the situation, forgive other people. Because there's a piece of letting go, and there's a piece of surrender and letting go and acceptance that comes with forgiveness. And often I found through my clients, for the companies I do trainings at, through my workshops, that most people that I talk to, especially the most high achieving, are the harshest critics of themselves. We beat ourselves up like no other. And so as a tiny baby step towards acceptance, what can you forgive yourself for? What can you do to forgive yourself and accept yourself like you might a little child? Just hold space and accept and love them unconditionally.
Wow, powerful. Very powerful. Very powerful. And that's, thank you for sharing that story too, because it really brings it home, right? I mean, a real life example of how he went through resisting his diagnosis and fighting it towards accepting where he's at and actually seeing it as a gift. Amazing. I mean, it's getting me emotional about it, just that he experienced that. I mean, you're an amazing coach to be able to do that. And for him to actually go through that whole process. What an incredible gift that you gave to him as well. So again, it's all about, like you said, is really awareness is the key, and acceptance and forgiveness. And then taking that in terms of our action item is really forgiving ourselves and to be able to move forward in our life.
Right.
A lot of gold right there. Thank you so much. That's so much gold right there. Thank you for that.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate that. I know our audience appreciates that as well.
Well, that's the thing. When I created this framework, try to distill into as simple terms as possible, to distill it into steps that seem simple and easy to follow. Most people, when they're asking, well, how do I feel less stress? How do I manage my stress? How do I fill in the blank? Often they want to address to what I call what is the third step for me, which is address, right? Because often people, especially with stress management, things like that, they want like, what are the fix? What are the tools? What are the hacks, right?
Yeah.
And that, although those tools can be super helpful, unless you do, I've come to see time and time again, I have so many stories to illustrate this, where if you don't have that step of awareness and acceptance first, those tools become band-aids, and they work maybe temporarily or sometimes not even at all, because you haven't done those first two steps. And so that's why I really encourage people to take the time to become aware of your situation, how you're feeling, start to take the steps to accept that. And then from there, what are the tools that you can apply that'll become even more effective as a result? How do you address it? And then after you address it, you start to feel a little bit better. The fourth step is adapt. How can you now adapt? Is all about prevention. So often we feel stressed, we might be anxious, whatever is coming up for us. We do enough just to feel just a little bit better. And then we go right back at it, right? We don't think about, well, how can we adapt our situation, prevent it from happening in the first place? What can we do to set up? It could be simple as cleaning your office desk so that you're not stressed every time you sit at it. It could be that simple. But what are the little things that you can do? Turning off your notifications on your phone, or only checking your email at certain times of day. What are those little things that you can do to adapt your environment, your situation, so that the next time around, you don't actually you're preventing the situation, the stress in the first place. So those are
that's, like I said, pure gold right there, pure gold. Really appreciate that. So we're kind of shifting right now. We're going to pivot right now, and I'm going to ask you some more fun questions, if you will. So I really want to know, we all want to know, we have this favorites part of our show, and we want to know what your favorites are. That also helps. I think a lot of times when we feel overburdened or stressed out, if we can focus on what energizes us and what our favorites are. So that's what we want to focus in on right now. What are your favorites? So what is your favorite food?
Oh my gosh. First of all, I love trying food all over the world. I will try anything. And so I love trying different things as I travel, new authentic foods. And the one type of food that I always tend to crave after a certain period of time is Thai food. So just authentic Thai food with all the flavors and all the way. I love Thai food. So that's my answer.
Sounds great. Love Thai food. That's fantastic. What is your favorite find? Your favorite find?
The answer that's coming up for me right now when you ask that is finding myself actually is probably
Mm.
the best thing that I've ever done for myself. And I shared a little bit of my story before. It's like I didn't really have a good sense of who I was back then because I was so busy living my life based on everyone else's standards. It's only
Mm.
until had to learn the hard way to hit my version of rock bottom that I started to realize something's got to change. And I started to dive deep into personal development and work with my own coaches and do all this healing inner work for myself first. And now I started to find myself and under all of that noise. And that's why I'm giving my TEDx talk in April in the first place. It's all about how do you find your truth and stop getting in your own way from living your truth and letting go of other people's expectations in order to really do that. And so I don't know how to describe it exactly until you've experienced it. It really is. I feel so much more alive than I've ever felt. I'm discovering myself in new ways and learning and exploring me, which is, I think, what everyone deserves to do and and it's a beautiful gift to be able to do that. And so that's what comes up when you ask me that.
I love that. I love that. That's so great. So great. And what is your favorite, now that we have the Oscars that just came on, right? What is your favorite film?
Oh my gosh, there's a lot. The one that comes up right now, the one that I actually tend to watch right around the holidays, and it's a feel-good movie. It's just feel-good movie of Love Actually. And so right around the holiday season, it's just the way that it tells the different character storylines and brings it all together, and it just feels good to me. And I think that's my trigger of, oh, it's the holidays. I get to watch Love Actually and really feel that emotion. So I would say that's one of my favorite films just to enjoy and yeah, just to relax and enjoy and feel.
Yeah, I've got to watch that movie.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah, I got to watch that. And the last one is favorite fitness.
Mm. So two come to mind. I love yoga and Pilates, just moving and stretching my. Oh, actually, no, I take it back. I don't know if this counts, but dancing. I love, love, love dancing. So if I put on the right music and I just move my body and dance, and it's really truly therapeutic, right?
Yeah,
Of
I love
moving
it.
my body, expressing myself. I have the most done. I could dance all night long. So
I love it. I love
yeah.
dancing too. That's so great. That's so great. Love it. Love it. And where can we find you, Dr. Lisa? Where can we find you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn if you want to follow my journey for the TEDx that's coming up in a couple of months. I post a lot there, different stories, different events. So LinkedIn, it's Lisa Yeung MD. And then my website is lisayoungmd.com. So pretty easy to remember. And I have a YouTube channel. All of it's on and Instagram. So all of it's under Lisa Yeung MD. And so hopefully you can find me there as well. And the stress workshop that we had mentioned also is just lisayoungmd.com/stress workshop. And I'll give your listeners also a special code podcast for you to be able to join me on the workshop, which basically it's all about stress relief, right? To help you with stress relief. And the first step is what I've come to realize is that, especially the people who are most successful, the most high achieving, especially in the face of stress, which many of us in the past few years have, especially, I mean, stress levels are at all-time high.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The things that we do often are making things worse for ourselves, and we don't even realize it. They're creating more stress, more problems. And this particular workshop is focused on the 5 mistakes that people make that create even more stress and problems and how you can avoid them. And it's been so fun to have this workshop. I've had it about like once a month or so, and to see the shifts that people make, they're like, oh my God. And to really have breakthroughs and the ha-has that they start to implement, and the tips and tools that I share there is really powerful. So I'm happy to offer that to your listeners as well.
Sounds great. Sounds fantastic. And that's drlisayeungmd.com with the code.
Yeah. No doctor in front, just lisayeungmd.com.
Okay, lisayeungmd.com. And then the password is, or the code word is podcast on there, right? And then they can get into the workshops.
Yeah. So
Okay.
So let me say it one more time.
One more time for our audience, just to make sure we got it.
So it's www.lisayeungmd, and Young is spelled like it is on the screen here, YEUNG. So lisayeungmd.com/stress workshop. And it'll be in the show notes too. But so that's the link to go there to find it. And then the code you can use when you check out for a special offer for your listeners is podcast.
Great. Love it. Thank you so much for your time and all the gold nuggets that you dropped today. It was just fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. We appreciate you so much, Dr. Lisa. Really appreciate you. And to all of our viewers watching, we're here every Tuesday. We stream live every Tuesday on E360 TV. We're also on the Roku channel, Amazon Fire, Android devices, Apple TV, Facebook, LinkedIn, all those channels every Tuesday, 10 Pacific time, 1 o'clock Eastern time. Pivot now, live life abundantly. We'll see you next week.
Change and shift your energy. Pivot.